You know Gray Bar for electrical parts, but there's one more thing you may not be thinking of us for that can help maximize your next project's total value. Our pre-project planning services are designed to help you win the bid, save on labor costs, and keep your installers productive across your entire build. The sooner you call us, the better. Because when we're there from the beginning, we can anticipate your needs and help you solve problems before they become problems. Yep, Gray Bar does that.
I'm going to start the podcast with two things today. Number one, there are no Pokemon Go characters available during this podcast anywhere for you to collect. Number two, I don't want to speak too soon, but this feels like one of the best episodes of the Show Before the Show podcast that we have done to date. So set your sights high, kids. Welcome in. It is the latest edition of the Minor League Baseball podcast, the Show Before the Show. I'm Tyler Maughan, and Sam Dykstra is back for another week. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Tyler. You set the bar incredibly high.
Very high.
We have so much podcasting still to do that I don't know if I can meet that bar, but I'm going to try my best,
It's all we can do. It's all we can do. Got to take it one segment at a time.
Just blow it out from the beginning.
Exactly.
Oh, no, this is going to be the best one you've heard in forever.
Exactly. And people by the end will be extraordinarily disappointed. No, we got a great one coming up on the show today, episode number 67 of the Show Before the Show podcast, which you can find, by the way, at milb.com/podcast. You can also find us on iTunes, wherever else you get your podcasts. And while you're there, give us a rating and a review and a subscription, if you would be so kind, if it's all nice things and 5 stars. And we would, you'll have our never-ending gratitude. We'll invite you to our birthday parties or something. Futures game in the books. Did you get to watch?
I did not. I was very busy with family things.
Yeah, you had a wedding and all that kind of crazy.
But I saw it on DVR, so I did not watch it live with everybody else, but I saw most of the action anyways. I saw, Eloy Jimenez, I think. Josh Jackson was there, was covering it for us.
He was, our own Josh Jackson.
He was trying to beat the drum for Eloy Jimenez being the MVP. I think he had a very strong case there. Moncada certainly, stole the spotlight with a homer and a steal and was doing all sorts of Yoan Moncada things. It was nice to see that on the big stage. But yeah, no, it looked like it was a plenty fun game. Compared to the Major League All-Star game, which was a little bit more of a dud. At least there were plenty of fireworks in that Futures game, particularly at the end for the World.
Josh Jackson, by the way, also gave a fairly in-depth breakdown on Tyler O'Neill's deltoids in a text message conversation that we had, because Josh and I have discussed the size of Tyler O'Neill's terrifying python arms on multiple occasions. And
terrifying Canadian python.
Terrifying Canadian python arms. It's the most dangerous export in Canadian history, Tyler O'Neill of the Seattle Mariners organization. And, it was a lot of fun. Futures game is always one of the coolest events on the calendar. And we, with that, have passed the midway point in the Major League season, and now, save for the short season leagues, everybody is over halfway done with the 2016 season, and that leads us into Strike One in this week's edition of Three Strikes, which is the subject of this week's Tool Shed from one Sam Dykstra on MILB.com. Mid-season Milbies, the best in minor league baseball yearly coming up at the end of the year, but for some mid-season love, Sam put together some options, some takes on who's really been standing out at the player, the individual level, the team level, the farm system level. Take us through it, Sam.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, we do our end of the season awards. This is a little bit of giving a little bit of a preview as to how things would shake out if the season ended today. So I won't touch on too much. We can have a little bit of a debate on some of these in a little bit. I think some of them are pretty cut and dry. We've talked so much on this podcast. We've written so much about him. Alex Bregman, that paragraph pretty much wrote itself. I had him as the top offensive player. This is a guy who, is the only minor leaguer to rank in the top 10 in both OBP and slugging. He's the only minor leaguer with an OPS above 1,000 with a 1.019 through 70 games in the Texas and Pacific Coast Leagues. His WRC plus is 183. When I wrote this, I couldn't find anybody else who had one higher than 174 at any level of the minors. I think that's changed since. Kristen Stewart is now at 182, so he's right below, but still Bregman has that that top spot there. So he's an easy pick for top offensive player, long story short. Brock Stewart I had for starting pitcher, a guy who's pitched at 3 different levels in the Dodgers system. He's leading all minor league full season pitchers with a 0.84 whip. He's got a 1.66 ERA, 10.3 strikeouts per 9, 1.5 walks per 9, and a 2.09 FIP. All of those, which, when you put them together, is a very, very strong resume. I don't think this is like last year when Blake Snell pretty much ran away with the starting pitcher of the year award at the halfway mark and at the end of the season. So I think Stewart just has the strongest resume right now. Again, we'll talk about this more at the end of the season. Milby's, just for the point of this, is how they've performed this season. It's not top prospect. It's not, most promising future, right, that kind of thing. It's who has performed best in this role. So top offensive player, Alex Bregman. I don't think anybody disagrees with that. He's been the best offensive performer in the minors so far. It's top starting pitcher, a little bit more a debate there, but I have Brock Stewart. Top reliever, Joe Jimenez. I'll save him because we're going to talk about him a little bit in a segment later. This one, I think there's a little bit more of a debate, and I would be interested to get your take on it, Tyler. I have Eloy Jimenez, the guy who was a little bit of the star in the Futures game this Sunday. He was the guy who both hit a home run, made a nice catch in right field going up and over the wall to pull a ball back for the World team. He was one of the Cubs' big international signings back in 2013, signed for $2.8 million, but was still ranked number 10 in a fairly crowded Cubs system coming into the season, but not really on the top 100 radar. I think that's certainly the case now. You could make a case that he is a top 50 prospect even. I know Baseball Prospectus and Baseball America both did that, putting him in the top 50. So he went from outside the top 100 into the top 50 on both of those lists. MLB Pipeline will be coming out with its own later this month, I believe. But for a guy who's 19 years old, he's hitting .332 right now with 40 extra base hits and an .899 OPS in 80 games at the Class A level for South Bend. This is a guy who just looks like he was made to hit. And the fact that he's doing that as a teenager, what would be his first it is his first full season, but had he gone into the draft last year, if he was American, this would be his first full season, really, doing well in a full season league. We'll see how long it stretches out, but it sounds like everybody was impressed with the way he performed at the Futures game. So he's my pick for top breakout prospect. Is there somebody else you have in mind, Tyler, or somebody else who could have gone there, you think?
I think he definitely has, maybe I don't want to say head and shoulders lead over everybody else in this conversation, but there are a lot of guys who are kind of grouped on that 1A tier behind him. One of the guys who really has stood out to me, and there are so many guys in this conversation who I don't know the extent that you can really call them breakout because of what they've done in the past and the notoriety that they've somewhat had coming into the season. But Tyler Glasnow, as great as he had been throughout his minor league career already prior to 2016, he goes to AAA in 2016 and becomes all of a sudden the best pitcher in baseball. Makes the climb, obviously, to Pittsburgh, and we've seen this rush of prospects now get to the Pirates. So I think that's one of the guys you could talk about as maybe being in sort of a final stage of breakout rather than just being the first time that he really arrives on the scene in the conversation. And obviously it's so different because he's been a known commodity for a while. But he's one of the guys who stands out. I also think you can make a case for multiple prospects in the Boston Red Sox system. Yohan Moncada, obviously, last year gained a lot of hype because of what he was able to do now at 2 levels so far this season. He's been outstanding. He's been better through 16 games in AA than he was at 61 games at Class A Advanced. So obviously, he's one that you could talk about. Andrew Benintendi was really, really good at the beginning of the season, has cooled a bit since going to AA. And Rafael Devers has continued to play well with Class A Advanced Salem. There was so much talent on that roster to start the year. You could have picked any of those guys, it feels like, too. So I think there are many guys who fit in, like I said, in kind of that second tier of the conversation. I also think Dansby Swanson could be primed to be one of those guys in that discussion by the end of the season. Again, he's played at 2 levels. He's held his own in AA, got the All-Star appearance. Seems like he's been finding his way there. But yeah, I agree with the assessment that at this stage, it feels like Eloy Jimenez is the guy who stands a little bit more, especially because coming into this season, he was not somebody with the notoriety of all these other prospects.
Yeah, and those guys you mentioned, that's what comes down. That's why I really like this category. I think we introduced it a couple of years ago in the Milbies. It is very subjective. it's how do you define a breakout? Is a breakout a guy who has become, gone from somebody we thought would be pretty good to being he's definitely going to be a star? And if that's the case, I think Moncada fits that pretty well. You could certainly make the case that he is now the game's top prospect. I mean, he has met that ceiling as far as prospects go. So is that how you define a breakout, or is it going from a guy who not a lot of people have heard to a guy like Eloy Jimenez, who in the prospect community now is pretty much just on a one-name basis, and if you say Eloy, you know who you're talking about.
Eloy Manning is who you're talking about.
Eloy Manning.
Oh, wait, never mind.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Not the same.
Yeah, not the same. But so it's how do you define breakout, and fans will get their chance this off season to kind of define that for themselves. Just to kind of run through the rest of the picks, we don't have to debate these as much, but best team I had AA Reading. When I wrote this, they were the only full season team with a winning percentage above 700. We know what they've done in this first half, specifically Rhys Hoskins and Dylan Cousins, two of the biggest boppers in the minors this season. A lot of that has to do with playing in Reading itself, but we can't discount what they've been able to do in terms of power as the top two leaders in minor league home runs. And then they've gotten help from top 100 prospects like J.P. Crawford, Jorge Alfaro, and Roman Quinn. So that's my pick for best team. Best farm system, I had the Cleveland Indians. Fifth best winning percentage when you take up all affiliates, but then you just look at each of their prospects, and I think they've all grown this season.
You make a good point in there too. Francisco Mejia, who is on like an 8 billion game hitting streak, he could also factor into that breakout prospect conversation.
He was actually the guy who was on my short list as well. He was number 2. To kind of peel back the curtain. But yeah, between Mejia, Bradley Zimmer, Clint Frazier, Bobby Bradley, Justice Sheffield, Mike Clevenger, Tristan McKenzie, these are all guys who look better now, I think, than they did at the beginning of the season. The only one I would say maybe that's not the case for is Bradley Zimmer, who seems to be striking out a lot more this year, but it still has that nice combo of power and speed at AA. And Brady Aiken is healthy and pitching. So that's the one bar he had to meet, and he's doing that. So there's lots to be excited about in that Indian system. I think they really improved themselves whenever we do farm system rankings again in the future. They will be slightly higher than they were last year. And game of the year, I have that wonderful Brooklyn Staten Island opening night marathon. Game went 20 innings. I think it featured 41 strikeouts between the two sides, 553 pitches, 16 different pitchers. Just a crazy game in the New York Penn League opener. That was my favorite game of the first half. And best performance was when Rob Wooten was given a spot start for the AAA Gwinnett Braves on June 30th and ended up throwing 6 no-hit innings as part of a no-hitter that the G Braves did that night. Going from a guy who I think only had one career start before that, being thrust onto the mound for 6 innings and coming through in a big way. That was a really cool thing. I think that was best individual performance, just being given the circumstance and all that. Austin Hedges had 8 RBIs, I know, earlier this month, and Preston Tucker had an amazing game where he hit 3 home runs and had 8 RBIs. Those were interesting performances as well, individual performances. But that Wooten one, I remember reading about that and just being like, wow, imagine just being pressed into a different job than you're used to and being nearly perfect. That was really cool to see. So those are my midseason Milby. I don't want to call them winners. I'll just call them picks. But yeah, that was the latest tool shed for this week. It's up now on the site.
Go check it out there. Yeah, Rob Wooten, 1 start in his previous 279 career appearances, and then in a second start, it just turns into no-hit day. Starts a no-hitter. Strike 2 this week. We sort of touched on this a second ago, but we're talking about first half breakout guys. Second half, who is primed in your eyes, Sam, to be somebody that we look at and say, yeah, he got it figured out?
Yeah, so I'm going to find breakout a little differently than I did in that first segment there, where what I mean is my breakout here is a guy who was struggling in the first half, not putting up the numbers maybe we expect, and seems primed to be, to just turn it on here in the second half. My pick for that is Lewis Brinson in the Ranger system. This was a guy who had his breakout year last year, played 3 levels, was at Class A Advanced High Desert, Double-A Frisco and Triple-A Round Rock, hit .332, 20 homers, 18 steals, did everything you would want to see out of a toolsy outfielder like him. This year, they sent him back to Frisco just because he only played 28 games there last year, let him get a little bit more Double-A experience under his belt this year. Not quite working out the way you would expect given his package of tools right now. As we're talking, he's hitting .243, .298, .477 with Frisco with 10 homers and 10 steals. So the power's not quite there. The hitting ability is not quite there when it was last year. Part of that, I think, is partly explained by, this is a guy who missed significant time in the first half. He missed, I think, just around a month with a left shoulder injury. So he might have been dealing a little bit with that beforehand. Since coming back, he has certainly turned it on. In July, just 6 games, so it's a very small sample. But he is 11 for 26 with 3 home runs in 6 games and also 2 steals. So that, over that 6-game span, I'm not projecting that out for the entire second half, but this is a guy who has a 1.406 OPS now that he is back and fully healthy. And when you dig down a little deeper into his numbers, he's got a 256 BABIP. And for a guy with his speed, I mean, you look back at his previous BABIPs last year in 28 games at the Double-A level, his BABIP was 333. And for those who don't know what BABIP is, it's batting average of balls in play, so BABIP. And that there's a lot of ways to look at BABIP. One way to look at it is luck. Normally, average BABIP is around 300, so if it's significantly lower than that, it could be because the defense is making a lot of good plays, stealing hits from a batter, and that could explain a low average like Brinson's 243. It's particularly high. It could be that he's gotten a little lucky. But if they're speedy like Brinson is, you would expect a higher BABIP because these are guys who are going to be beating out infield grounders and stealing hits here and there. So for his to be that low, I expect that to normalize in the second half. Certainly go up, and he seems like a candidate prime to just once now that he has his health, that power to certainly turn on the second half. He always has that speed, and I think the hitting ability will come back as well.
I was gonna say the same. I was gonna say Lewis Brinson also because the talent there, the tools there, you don't feel like you're gonna keep him down for long. So I'm gonna switch gears instead. I'm gonna go with Bradley Zimmer with the Double-A Akron Rubber Ducks in the Cleveland Indians organization. Obviously last year, really good breakout season with Class A advanced Lynchburg. After 78 games there, he moved up to Akron. Struggled a bit, batted .219, OPS .687. This year, the average has not been great, but he's done things really well around it. At the end of June, he was just a .234 hitter. Since then, he's bumped that average to .244 because over his first 9 games in July, and we're recording this on Wednesday, he's batting .324, .410, .588. And, Bradley Zimmer, it takes a long time to get adjusted to Double-A sometimes. And being, in that league, in that ballpark, obviously early on in the season, even though he did hit his best in May, that came off of the struggles of kind of a rough April in which, sometimes in the Eastern League, the weather's a factor. Travel can be a factor, as it is in so many of these circuits. But Bradley Zimmer seems, similarly to Brinson, a guy who is way too toolsy to keep down for long. So I'm expecting something out of him in the second half to make us go, oh, yeah, I remember what it was like fawning all over Bradley Zimmer this time last year.
Yeah, I feel really bad. Normally we coordinate these on who's going to say what.
No, I like that because when you said it, I thought, good, then I made a solid pick as well.
Yeah, see, there you go. That just means we're mind melding.
Podcast
right?
Synergistic.
Yeah, there we go. That's all that means.
By the way, somebody who could also be argued to be a breakout prospect in the first half of this season and maybe on in the second half is going to join the show here coming up in just a little bit. That's Ryon Healy of the Oakland Athletics organization. Ryan was at the Futures game this past weekend. We'll talk to him about that. But in case you're wondering, why not some Ryon Healy love? Because he's been outstanding. Don't worry, he gets a lot coming up here very shortly. And strike 3 this week, finally, Sam, we close with this one. All-Star game last night. Again, we're recording on Wednesday. The American League will have home field advantage for the 2016 World Series. There were a lot of guys in that game last night who this time, 5 years ago or this time when they were coming up in their careers, I don't think a lot of people would have looked at them and said, yeah, it's a Major League All-Star in the making. Of the guys who are in the minor leagues right now, who do you think at some point could surprise some people and make his way onto a Major League All-Star roster?
Yeah, so, when I kind of posed this question, I think back to some of the guys who were, in the Major League All-Star game last night. I know Matt Carpenter was definitely a guy who was not necessarily well thought of when he was in the minors. Or when I say well thought of, I mean not highly ranked, not a big-time prospect by any means. Now one of the game's bigger stars, Brad Brock, the guy with the Orioles, not necessarily, again, a top 100 prospect on any list, and now it's considered an all-star. So who would kind of follow in that mold? Who's somebody now that we're not going to see on a top 100 list, but could see in one all-star game, could see in multiple all-star games for all we know. And I mentioned earlier in the show that I would get back to Joe Jimenez in the Tiger system, and here we are. I'm going to talk about him now. This was a guy who got to be named to the Futures game, so a lot of people might have gotten their first chance to see him this Sunday. He was my pick for top reliever of the year. So far, he's a perfect 17 for 17 in saves, 0.83 ERA, 0.73 WHIP. Has not allowed a home run yet this year in 32 appearances. He struck out, get this, 45.1% of the batters he's faced. So almost half of every batter who steps into the box against Joe Jimenez this year at High A Lakeland and Double A Erie has struck out, has failed to make contact or put the ball in play. He does that because he's got a fastball in the high 90s. He's got a plus slider, so he's got those two pitches to make him a really good reliever. The reason I bring him up in this segment is because, normally when we talk about top prospects, we don't talk about relievers because that is their ceiling. They come in to pitch one inning a game, maybe every other day, every third day. If you're a closer, you're only coming in when you have the lead in the ninth, that kind of situation. So relievers typically don't make as big an impact on major league rosters. Therefore, they're not going to be highly ranked because you're going to choose a starter who has the potential to pitch 200 innings over a very good reliever who has the potential to throw 60, 65 innings. So Jimenez, I think, is one of those guys who, once he gets to the Tigers, he is their closer of the future. And all you got to do is rack up saves to get spots in All-Star games, to be frank. And he has the stuff to be a long-time closer, even though he's only ranked right now number 8, I believe, in the Tiger system according to MLB.com. So he's a name you could see multiple times in future All-Star games, but might not necessarily see very high on prospect lists right now.
I'm going to stay same division. I'm going to go a little bit off the radar, and I don't know how this would play out down the road, but hey, we're picking, off the radar picks for something like this. Hunter Dozier in the Kansas City Royals organization. I know a lot of people out there listening are like, Hunter Dozier, really? This is your pick? Hunter Dozier this season has done nothing but just smash and punish baseballs everywhere he's gone. Struggled, obviously, pretty badly in 2014 and 2015 while at Double A Northwest Arkansas. But the thing I like about it, came back, went to Double A Northwest Arkansas to start the season, and slashed 305, 400, 642. Got a bump to AAA Omaha in the Royal system. With the Omaha Storm Chasers over 57 games, he's OPSing 942. So he's held his own. Obviously, there are a lot of roadblocks for this circumstance. They've got a pretty good third baseman, despite the fact that he's injured right now in Kansas City. But, the Royals have factored very heavily into the All-Star game over the last few years. I'm going to give the Royals some love. Hunter Dozier, he's the 14th-ranked Royals prospect. When he was drafted, most everybody wondered, what are the Royals doing taking this kid 8th overall? I've liked Hunter Dozier throughout his career. It's really good to see a guy like that make the adjustment, find his way back to some success at a difficult level like being in the Texas League. Why not? Why not Hunter Dozier?
No, I actually really like now that you've explained yourself and talked your way through it, how you reverse engineered that.
Thank you.
And that it was, the Royals just seem to get every All-Star now.
Exactly.
So who is the guy in the Royals
If he's
system?
on the Major League roster, he's going to be leading in votes somewhere.
Yeah, so I see what you did there.
So there, that wraps up this week's edition of Three Strikes on the show before the show's 67th episode, which last week, by the way, I said episode 67 in the last segment. I had to go back and cut it out because I didn't realize that it was actually episode 66. But this week really is episode number 67. Coming up on this week's edition of the show, the Oakland Athletics have a whole lot of guys really talented at corner infield spots, and one of them shined pretty brightly in the Futures game over the weekend. That is one of Twitter's latest additions, Ryon Healy, third baseman / first baseman, who's up with the AAA Nashville Sounds right now. Ryon Healy joins the show to talk about the Futures game, San Diego, the experience of being there, and what it's been like climbing up to the AAA level this season. The Oregon product Ryon Healy joins the show before the show next.
Watch the Stars of Tomorrow today on MILB TV. Before they made it to the show, stars like Mike Trout, Bryce Harper, and Chris Bryant were on MILB TV. Subscribe today to get more than 5,000 minor league games streamed live and on demand, including games from affiliates of all 30 major league clubs. Select All-Star and postseason games are also included. On the go? Watch on your iPhone, iPad, or iPod Touch with the free MILB First Pitch app. Visit MILB.tv for details.
We are officially past the midway point of everything that isn't short season ball in the Major League and minor league calendars now, and we are joined for this week's edition of the Show Before the Show podcast by the Oakland Athletics number 16 prospect. That's Ryon Healy, who was fresh off an appearance at the Futures game over the weekend at San Diego. Ryan, welcome back to reality. I would imagine it was a fun weekend. How was San Diego?
Oh, it was a blast. Being quite close to home, having friends and family out. Couldn't have been better.
So tell us about the experience. The Futures game, obviously, I mean, one of the most prestigious honors that you can experience as a minor leaguer. You get to go out there, take part in the entire game, but it's more than just that. I mean, you guys, as rosters for the U.S. and the world, you get to go out and kind of have the mini Major League All-Star experience. Just kind of take us through the weekend.
I'll be honest, the San Diego citizens and the people that are running the Padres Park, they did an amazing job of making you feel like not only you were comfortable there, but you felt like a big leaguer. So I've had numerous friends that have done this in the past, and they gave you nothing but words of encouragement and kind things to say about it. And I think experiencing it firsthand made it that much sweeter. Being that close to home was awesome. I probably had upwards of 50 to 60 friends and family there to watch it all go down. But the facilities there are bar none. So, I mean, that made it that much sweeter, and the weather couldn't have been any better.
And just kind of take us back to when you found out. I mean, we talk to a lot of guys and we hear about how they hear about promotions or, getting that call to the big leagues, that kind of thing. How do you find out about getting to the Futures game? And specifically for you, how do you put all that together when you have that many friends and family expected to come?
Oh, my head was spinning. I mean, I found out when I was playing a card game Pluck with 3 of my other teammates, and my manager and my hitting coach walk over and say, "Oh, Ryon Healy's representing us on the USA team for the Futures game." And I was like, "I'm sorry, what? Who is? Me?" So I kind of had to let it sink in, and then I walked outside, and I called my parents, called family, friends, girlfriends, agents, just kind of let everyone know. I was like, everyone had a million questions, but I had no answers. So I said, "Hey, guys, I have news, but nothing to follow that. So hang on tight, and I'll let you know when I figure more out."
And take us through the game itself. You had a solid afternoon there. I think you were 2 for 3, throwing a double off Alex Reyes, a guy who you would face a little bit, I think.
I have faced Alex Reyes probably way too much for my liking. That's the first time that I have gotten a hit off him. So him and I have actually formed a relationship over the last couple of years of facing each other and seeing each other outside of the ballpark. So really, really awesome guy and even a better player. So, you really enjoy just competing with guys like that. And he gave me a little smile when I was on third base. So I think we were all enjoying ourselves.
Yeah, I was going to say, how do you turn on a 99-mile-an-hour fastball and turn it into a double like that, especially on a stage like that?
I wish I could give you an explanation, but it kind of just happens. It's one of those things where just your reactions take over, and once you're rounding first base, I'm going, how the heck did I just hit that pitch?
Ryan, when you are part of an experience like that, you were the lone A's member of the U.S. roster. Over on the world side, there are so many talented guys, like Alex Reyes that you mentioned, that guys who you have seen throughout your career. But who are some of the guys who maybe you hadn't been exposed to, whether it was teammates or opponents in the Futures game that you really, liked taking BP or liked watching on the mound? Who kind of stood out to you from some of these other young stars that are up and coming?
I saw Alex Bregman play a little bit in the beginning, and he's just the easy one to say stood out because of how well he did and how good of a player he is. But the one guy that I really enjoyed talking to was Dansby Swanson. For being the number 1 overall pick, he was a very humble human being, very willing to learn and discuss the game of baseball. It wasn't about himself at all, and him and I had great conversations through the course of the game. So I really enjoyed getting to know him, along with, I already knew Hunter Dozier and Hunter Renfroe. So we all had really good times hanging out. And then Ryan Stanek is another guy that I played with throughout college. So a lot of familiar faces in the clubhouse and on the field in the dugout. So I think we all enjoyed ourselves in everyone's company.
When you are taken away from, the routine of a minor league season to go take part in something like that, we hear, especially this week, there's been so much discussion about how for the Major League All-Stars, it's really not a break. The Major League guys go and they take part in all these events and they go play in the game. And then, there's a day off on the back end, but most of the time those guys are traveling. But in the minor league season, it's got to be a really cool break in the monotony of the schedule. What has it been like? Your last minor league game now was for AAA Nashville back on the 8th. Getting, taken away, kind of this dream experience, then all of a sudden you get thrown back into the PCL grind. What's that been like?
It was kind of a stressful process because you go out of your comfort zone. You don't know what to expect. Not to mention I come home and I have nothing but family and friends that need entertaining. So trying to figure out what kind of time I have available and then also what stuff I need to do for the futures games and to please everyone. So trying to please a lot of people and ended up working out. I had some great support systems that just helped with a lot of the extracurricular things that I didn't want to deal with, so they were great with that. But once it all came together, honestly, once I got on the field on Sunday, everything just kind of made sense again. It was just like, okay, this is home. I know how to do batting practice. I know how to hang on the clubhouse, and I know how to play games. So everything else was more difficult than the actual game. But tomorrow I'll go and join my team in El Paso for the opening series second half, and then things will start to make sense again in our world.
And just to get a little bit of the focus back onto the regular season, what helped you earn your spot in the Futures game? You split this year between Nashville and Midland. It seems like a little bit of a breakout year for you. You hit 14 homers already. We're halfway through the season, only 2 more, and you tie your career high. You're hitting 325 between those 2 levels. What kind of work in this offseason or spring training, or what's been different about this year for you, or what's gone into this breakout from your end?
I kind of got to a point where I got through the off season and I didn't get a big league invite, and I kind of had a feeling it was a make or break year for me as a 24-year-old, being on the cusp of a prospect, non-prospect kind of guy, and it was time for me to really either step up or step aside, and was getting to that point where I needed to really make a big change in some of the things that I do as a player. So I spent a lot of time this offseason studying film, talking to Major League Baseball players, people that played numerous years in the big leagues. Couple of guys that are really impactful was Ed Sprague, that was hired by the A's. That's kind of a mentor rover guy, so he has helped me a ton. Played similar positions that I played in the major leagues for upwards of 8 to 12 years and around that. So him and I still talk religiously. And then Kevin Pillar, one guy that I trained with in the off season and talked to throughout the course of the year. Their Tuke hitting instructor there, Tewksbury, I think it is, helps a lot of the guys along with Donaldson and Encarnacion and Batista, and even Kevin was going through it. So him and I were going through similar adjustments together. Once things started to click through the course of spring, it kind of caught fire once I got to Midland, and I just tried to run with it as far as I could and really write everything down that I was feeling and thinking and just kind of keep that in my memory book and have that as a reference for when things go south, because in baseball they always do go south, and as soon as you can climb back north as possible, obviously that's what makes you a better baseball player.
So at what point this season did it feel like things had kind of clicked, or was there one particular note you had taken that advice from those guys? Was there one specific spot or anything like that where it felt like this was a big year and things were finally clicking for you?
I honestly don't even think I've had that realism yet. I haven't allowed myself to feel the success that I've had so far. I don't really sit back and enjoy what I've done just because the season's so long. It's impossible to enjoy what's already happened because you wake up the next morning, it's a new day, a new game. So you really have to take the ups and the downs with a grain of salt and sleep it off and do it again the next day, whether it's a walk-off home run or a 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts, which both have been done this year. So you really have to treat them both like the same and wake up the next morning with a positive mindset, ready to do it all over again. Hopefully the positive, not the negative.
Ryan, in the system right now with you, there are a lot of good guys who are at corner infield spots, and you've seen time obviously at first and third and is a DH in AAA so far. But there's Matt Olson who can play a little bit in the outfield, also plays first base. Matt Chapman plays third base. Renato Nunez plays third base. There's so many guys who are at the similar spots in their careers and also similar positions, and a lot of people obviously would view that as a challenge, is how is the pathway clear for all of you guys to make that ascension to Oakland. But I would imagine there's a ton of benefit in that too, in that you guys can sort of commiserate, bounce things off each other, learn from each other. How does that dynamic work with so much of that talent right now at AA and AAA in the A's system?
you really have to put your ego aside in the sense that you're not essentially competing against each other. You're competing against the game of baseball, because there's 29 other teams out there that may not have a Matt Chapman or Matt Olson or Ryon Nunez or Ryon Healy, for that matter. So you're really out there competing against the game and improving your skills as much as humanly possible. And if one of those players has knowledge about something that I don't, then we'll try and share knowledge and learn from our mistakes and go from there. But it really has to be more, and it sounds really selfish, and that's not how I'm trying to say it, but individualized in the sense of your development, and allow the teamwork and the winning to kind of come along with that. Because I've heard numerous times that, you're there to perfect your skills, and that's what the minor leagues is for. You talk to managers, and you only failures you have is the ones that you don't learn from. So I think we've all done a good job of helping one another, and I really think that all of them are going to be big leaguers, whether it's with the Oakland A's or not. You never know. That's just the reality of baseball nowadays. But you really have to put your selfishness aside and be willing to help people around you, and I think that comes back around and helps you also.
And Ryan, we'll leave you on this one. You talked about how necessarily it might not be with the A's that you'd be making major league debut, or you've got all these guys who could potentially move and all that kind of stuff. But in this A's system, it's the only system you've known so far. It's certainly one that comes with a reputation of Moneyball and all that, with Billy Beane at the top. I mean, they made a movie out of it and all that. But what is it like to be a prospect in the A's system? What can you kind of tell us about what their kind of machinations are, what it's like, as a guy who's come up from, a draft pick all the way up to AAA now, what it's like to be a prospect there?
It's a lot of fun to be a homegrown guy. I think anywhere you are, you've known the system and everyone that's in it, from trainers to coaches to managers to everyone, strength coaches through and through from the beginning to now. And it's a lot of fun to build relationships with all these people that you get to see on a daily basis. It makes going to the office that much more enjoyable every day. And I mean, the more people you have, it's just more fun to have. The amount of homegrown guys that we have in our national team right now is pretty incredible, because of how close we've been over the last 3 years, and the success that we've had has made baseball that much more enjoyable. So, learning is always more fun when you're winning. So I think that we've done a great job at that, and the Oakland A's have really instilled that in their farm system and continue to grow.
Ryon Healy, the Oregon Ducks product, is a kind of a new addition to Twitter over the last few days, at RCHealy25, but he's already verified, which is awesome. We just give him a follow from the MILB account, so you can find Ryan there. And, by the way, there was a really cool tweet during the Futures game that went out. MLB tweeted out a screenshot from the broadcast. You guys were using some really cool bats from Blast Motion that provided a whole lot of crazy data on, swing speeds and obviously the exit velocity and all that kind of stuff that we've grown accustomed to with StatCast. But Ryan's swing speed during the Futures game was 74.9 miles per hour. The Major League average is 69.6, so that's pretty cool. So go follow Ryan on Twitter. And Ryan, we can't thank you enough for making a few minutes for us, and congratulations on all the success this season, the Futures game appearance, and we'll be watching in Nashville the rest of the way. Best of luck.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time. Have a great day.
Week after week, I'm always excited to talk to Benjamin Hill, but this week, a blog post and a story came out of which my excitement could hardly be any higher. Ben, first off, welcome in.
Hey, thank you for welcoming me, and I'm glad to be here.
So let's get into this. The Spokane Indians put out a story 2 days ago on their site, which you can go find, which is one of the most amazing minor league things that I've ever seen. I don't want to take away the thunder from this story, so I'm going to have you explain this, Ben, but it surrounds the 1987 to 1989 Spokane Indians and their team card sets.
Yeah, I found out about this for the first time last night. The team got a hold of me and said, this is something that might interest you, knowing my kind of weirdo, bizarre sensibilities, and this definitely interests me. For these 3 years in Spokane Indians history, they were sponsored by the local Northtown Mall. And so, because that was the sponsor and they wanted to promote the mall and put everything together, they actually photographed these team sets at the mall. So there's 3 years of Spokane Indians baseball card team sets in which players are in full uniform They went to the mall as a group field trip and spent the afternoon wandering around and choosing what to pose with or against or whatever. So it is just a classic mix of just surreal late 80s images. We've got, pitcher Bobby Sheraton posing with a cardboard cutout of Alf. You have the manager at one point. What was the manager's name? He was
Steve Lubratich, I'm assuming is how you say his last name. Maybe it's like Lubratich. I don't know. Lubratich. I got to look up his baseball reference.
Steve Lubratich is pictured with a cardboard cutout of Whitney Houston, and he has his arm around Miss Houston, but he looks miserable. Like he looks like he's
pleased.
Being coerced into this whole thing. There's several mannequin photos that the team sent me. We were all cracking up before we went on air about this one where Saul Soltero has his arm around a mannequin who's looking at him while behind him is another mannequin creeping, staring over his shoulder.
The lighting on that could not be better either, because you can't really see anything of this mannequin over his left shoulder other than her ghostly white face with very creepily lifelike eyes, and she's just dead staring the other mannequin that Saul Sotero appears to be hitting on. So maybe there was like a little mannequin jealousy. It was the 80s. They were coming alive from movies and stuff. We don't know what happened.
It was definitely a different era. So if you want a bit of 80s nostalgia and a truly weird bit of baseball card history. The Indians were nice enough to send me 8 images of these cards. I assume there's way more. I went online and actually just bought the 88 team set for $3. But go to my blog, Ben's Biz blog, and check out a little backstory and plenty of pictures from the Spokane Indians team sets in which the players went to the mall in full uniform and posed with mannequins, cardboard cutouts, various storefronts. It's just a goldmine.
You know what else I love about it too is it's really not that bad of an idea on the scope of minor league sponsor tie-ins. When you think like, oh yeah, the mall will sponsor it, they'll obviously, they'll pay the cost, they'll get to slap a logo on it, whatever, and in exchange for that, you got to take pictures of the mall. Like, it's very much a logical progression of minor league sponsorships, but it also somewhat surprises me that we don't see this more often in some sort of spectrum where, like they're taking pictures at a car dealership or something. Like, it seems like this is something that a minor league team could still well do today. I think it just works out so perfectly that they all look so dated now with Alf and Whitney Houston and the hairstyles, and it just plays out so beautifully, this story.
Yeah, it really does. But I think you're right. I think teams might actually want to consider this idea going forward. It won't be as awesome because it's the present day and, the past is awesome and we all hate the present. But, you got a zoo, you got a water park, you got a car dealership, whatever. If they're a team sponsor, minor league card sets can sometimes be kind of a tough sell because only the hardcore collectors get into them. So why not add a dose of absurdity and tie it into a sponsorship and try to get a little more attention for it?
I would love the zoo. I think the zoo would be a
that
big
would
seller.
be good.
Yeah,
that'd be good.
There's got to be.
It's got to be friendly animals. Can't put anybody in like the grizzly enclosures.
Well, you could.
Well, they could just
that would be
lean
too.
over the little wall for it, and just like the grizzly. Like Mark Appel a couple of years ago when he took that selfie, he was standing over the bear pit, and the bear was looking up at him. It was like the greatest selfie ever taken. Maybe they could do that from now on.
Yeah, well, that could potentially be a different sort of mall photo.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
All right, kind of moving on to, it seems like every couple weeks we've been talking this year about a new team going after a new identity. I think we knew Lynchburg was going to change its name. Now we know some of the team name finalists that fans of Lynchburg are going to vote on. What can you tell us about that? Starting with, I can't believe I'm going to say this, the Lynchburg Love Apples.
Yeah, the Lynchburg Hillcats, the latest team to throw their hat into the renaming ring. I think they're joining, Staten Island, New Orleans, Binghamton. Now we got Lynchburg on the scene with a renaming contest. And one of the reasons I do love these renaming contests, in addition to reading the Facebook comments of fans who are outraged at every single selection every single time, one thing I love is that you truly do learn about weird bits of a local area's history.
That is true.
And you really do. And I being serious here, I believe I can talk so much more knowledgeably about America as a whole because of the things I've learned through this job, and that really does extend to even these absurd name the team contests. So it's an apocryphal tale, but Thomas Jefferson apparently visited Lynchburg. He was a big fan of that area, Lynchburg, Virginia. And, there was debate at that time whether tomatoes were poisonous, and he, bit into them to prove that they weren't. And he dubbed them love apples. And so now we've got the Lynchburg Love Apples as a potential team name. So that's the one that really stands out. I wrote about this in a blog post yesterday, just riffing on all the different things. I mean, you see Love Apple up there, and that's the one that's going to really, be the love apple of your eye. And that wasn't even good. But some other interesting ones up there. The Lynchburg derechos.
Yeah, I don't know how to say that word.
Well, it's a Spanish word meaning, derecha would be right, and I think the origins of that Spanish word are originally right as in like the law or wise, but it's also used for, your right or left. But a derecho, I don't know. I shouldn't even try to adopt a Spanish accent, but that's a type of storm that's prevalent in the region, a straight line windstorm that look pretty ominous. So they could be named after a locally specific kind of storm. We got the Lynchburg Doves. It's a reference to their faith-based history. I mean, Lynchburg is the home of Liberty University and the Falwells and the Teletubby bands and all those things. So the Doves, and it's also a tribute to hunting culture, Lynchburg Doves. Hillcats is still in the mix. We find it improbable that the team would do a contest like this and still go with Hillcats. We'll see about that. And then almost as absurd as Love Apples is Lamb Chops, because Lamb Chops just a goofy name. But the description for why is it's a celebration of Lynchburg's faith-based heritage. And, Jesus is the Lamb of God. So it's kind of weird to have a pretty serious and heavy religious reference tied into the frivolous, irreverent nature of a name like the Lamb Chops. And if you're going to reference the faith-based history and have that name, I don't even want to start speculating what the logos could be.
And as children of a certain era, I guess we kind of all sort of straddle this line. But when I hear the term lamb chop, I think of the sock puppet.
That's what I was going to say.
Which was on TV.
Yeah, and in my blog post,
I
embedded "This is the song that doesn't end" and suggested that if they do use that name, they could go ahead and play that song at the ballpark. And then finally, with the River Runners in Lynchburg, and that's because John Lynch, at age 17, started a ferry service, and his ferry service was what established what became Lynchburg as a viable community. So the town's named after John Lynch and his ferry service. He was a river runner, so that's a more historical, slightly more, I won't say conservative name, but it's not as ridiculous as Love Apples or Lamb Chops, certainly. So another team in the mix that's going to rebrand, and we all look forward to the names and the logos and all the debating that comes with it, and, of course, learning more and more about American history through team name contests.
By the way, one of the things that people, when I used to work in the Carolina League, one of the things that people assumed, which I learned, like Ben said, you learn a lot of stuff by getting to know these teams' histories and their areas' histories, not the Lynchburg where Jack Daniels is made. A lot of people think that about Lynchburg, Virginia. That is not. That's Lynchburg, Tennessee, where you can't even drink Jack Daniels because it's a dry town. It's like a dry county, as I understand.
Yeah, I visited there years ago and toured the Jack Daniels distillery and got some lemonade afterwards. It's
okay.
Kind of a weird thing. Like, hey, toured this whiskey distillery and here's a nice glass of lemonade.
Touching.
Here's this product that we're very famous for. Now enjoy our lemonade.
Right. I'm trying to think of an analogy for that and kind of coming up blank right now, or at least ones that I don't want to say on a family-friendly podcast.
All right, we are in the throes of the Pokemon Go phenomenon in society. I'll refrain from any commentary on it, but we've already seen teams posting there are Pokemon Go stops in ballparks from coast to coast. I even saw the Hartford Yard Goats, who are not playing in their own ballpark. There are Pokemon that you can collect at Dunkin' Donuts Park, which isn't even open to the public. But what's been going on with this, and what has the reaction been for the minor league community? Because on the one hand, you want to embrace that, fans coming to the facility, that sort of thing. On the other hand, it's kind of annoying to just have a lot of people show up at your doorstep and be like, hey, we got to stop in here and collect these creatures that don't exist while our phones are being mined for data by big tech companies.
Yeah, I am not in on this phenomenon, and it quite honestly, on a personal level, feels a little unsettling to me. I just learned about it for the first time this past weekend, on Friday night.
Oh yeah, no, it blew up last week.
And now we're talking on Wednesday as if this is just such an entrenched phenomenon. It's so strange how fast these things move. And someone tweeted at me over the weekend like, "Hey, what do you think the first team to do a Pokemon promotion is?" And at the time I was like, "What? I don't even know how that would work." And of course, bam, they've blown up. And Tyler, to your question about how annoying it is, or people just wanting to come to the ballpark to to find these characters and gyms and all these other kind of terminology I'm not too familiar with. Minor league baseball's there's already a culture of distraction here.
True.
It can be annoying sometimes, but it's all things to all people. It's family-friendly entertainment. It's the video boards and the food and the music and the sound effects. So to me, saying please come to the ballpark to find these Pokemon characters is just an extension of all that, even if it is a further distraction. But the teams have also, the Durham Bulls, I think, were the first team to announce a Pokemon-related promo. And one thing they did is they opened the field to the public for 2 hours yesterday, and in exchange for a donation that went to charity. So that's a pretty cool way to get people access to areas that they normally can't. Raise money for charity and work on it that way. You're also seeing teams now announce it as weekly promos for the rest of the year. I think I just got a press release from the Carolina Mudcats saying that Wednesdays or Thursdays are now like Pokemon Go days, and you can do X, Y, and Z, and there'll be contests at the ballpark for the the fan who catches like the highest profile Pokemon or however it works. So it's not going to go away. Dozens and dozens of teams have already done something, and I'm sure dozens and dozens more will, because what's it about? Getting people into the ballpark, and if that's going to get people into the ballpark, then why not?
Is there going to be like a team that's going to come in with a last-minute Pokemon jersey night, theme night, that type of thing, or is promo schedule too set for that kind of turnaround?
It's not necessarily the promo schedule itself is too set, but in terms of the licensing and design, that would be a pretty quick turnaround for the 2016 season. You never know, though. You never know in this speedy world in which we live how quickly this might come together, or at least a jersey referencing Pokemon without quite using the terminology and trademark logos and all that. Some teams are pretty good at skirting the edge of copyright law, and more power to you.
Ben, before we wrap things up for this week, you've got a story coming up at the end of the week on an Appy League storyline that you discovered while you were down there last week. The Princeton Rays mascot Roscoe holds a wrestling belt in a local league. Explain this story.
Well, this is just great. I was in the Appy League through July 4th, visiting every team, and I'm still, a couple weeks later, feel like I barely scratched the surface and writing about all these visits, writing a couple articles a week, and really got to get going on the blog post as well. Much more to come from the Appy League, that's what I'm saying. But one of the next things to come is my stop in Princeton, where I met Roscoe the Rooster. And two things about Roscoe. One, he talks. And the only other mascot I've ever met in minor league baseball who talks is Archie with the Reno Aces. So he's a chicken and he talks, or a rooster and he talks. And I interviewed him a couple times during the game. I interviewed him on video, and that'll be embedded in the story. And then I just started talking to him later, just during the game, and got a bunch more quotes. So I'm writing a story based on my experiences talking to Roscoe, and Roscoe's alter ego, Tommy Thomason, a local guy who also is the team's clubhouse manager. And in talking to Roscoe, it was became increasingly difficult to blur the lines between, am I talking to this chicken right now, or am I talking to Tommy Thomason, who, is kind of sort of is Roscoe? Because a couple times, when I was talking to Roscoe, he mentioned his divorce, and I was just kind of like, I mean, did you, Roscoe?
Things are getting awkward.
Yeah, did you, Roscoe, the talking chicken, get divorced, or did the man inside? But
there's
not a man inside any mascots.
No, never.
Mascots exist. So it gets very tricky. I'm trying
chicken
to figure out it's a very difficult thing. But to talk to Roscoe was a pleasure, and he's a really nice guy, really nice chicken. And he also is undefeated on the local wrestling circuit. He started off wrestling against a mascot, or a wrestler called the Cuban Assassin, and he's since had 25 matches, and he's 25-0. He's wrestled at the ballparks a few times. He has a wrestling belt that he wears on occasion, and he literally gets in the ring and wrestle. So I love it. This is my wheelhouse. A talking mascot in a West Virginia Appalachian League team who also wrestles like pretty much on his own accord and volition outside of being the team mascot. It's just a wonderful thing, and the reason I travel this country.
Every week is $1 million week. When
like how did they not just accidentally, I think back to when I was like Stone Cold Stunner, you would grab the guy's head and just pull it down. How does his head just not fall off and traumatize all the children?
Well, because it's not a costume, Sam, because he's actually he's a 6'3",
he's a real large.
I'm just saying we wouldn't want a rooster running around with his head off.
You're saying like the mall Santas, they're just like the proxies of the real Santa, and they get sent out there. So if the actual Roscoe had to send somebody in a costume, theoretically, I see what you mean. Because it doesn't really happen because they're
it gets complicated. But no, we don't want to see a chicken running around with his head cut off. I got you on that one. Yeah, so read about it. It'll be up on the site on Friday.
It's coming up.
And it includes a 2-minute interview, and he dances for the camera, and he also shows his finishing move in the wrestling ring. So look out for that.
Every week is a good week with Benjamin Hill, but this week has been loaded with awesome stuff. Go read the Mall Baller story on bensbiz.mlblogs.com right now about the Spokane Indians and that bizarre run of baseball cards in the late 80s. See if you can track down Steve Lubritich and see if he ever broke the neck of the person taking the picture of him with his arm around a cardboard cutout of Whitney Houston. You can also go check out the Lynchburg Hillcats Name the Team contest. That's up at their site right now, and you can check out Ben's content on the site and on the blog the rest of the week and on into next week when we talk to Ben again. It's going to be tough to top this one. This is a good week.
Yeah, but this is this time of year. There's so much going on right now. I mean, we have topics we weren't able to even hit on today that are relevant. It's just a deep well, and we're just going to keep raising those buckets right up into the airway. Oh man, that analogy collapsed.
It so close.
It collapsed. So
next week, more bucket raising.
There you go.
Come
back next week. We're going to raise those buckets.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Ryon Healy and Benjamin Hill are two guests for this week's episode of the Show Before the Show podcast. Big thanks to those two guys. And again, keep an eye out for Ryon Healy the rest of this way with the Nashville Sounds at the AAA level in the Pacific Coast League. And that leads us into talking about some MILB.TV, where you can catch Ryon Healy and his Nashville Sounds, and also a whole lot of other talent. One of the guys who we discussed, even Sam, who are you eyeballing this week on MILB TV?
Yeah, so Ryon Healy, in his interview, we talked about his one of his at-bats. His double came against Alex Reyes, and I love the way he interrupted me when I was asking the question. Not that he interrupted me in an impolite fashion or anything like that, but when he was saying, "Oh yeah, no, I know Alex Reyes. I have gone up against Alex Reyes. I don't think I've ever gotten a hit against him." So now you can see Alex Reyes this Saturday. He's slated to pitch for AAA Memphis against Albuquerque. The game is in Albuquerque, so there's some pretty good matchups there. We know David Dahl is now up with the Isotopes. Got the call up from AA Hartford a little bit before the All-Star break, so he's still getting his feet wet at the AAA level, but it's certainly taken off there. There's a couple other good prospects there with Tom Murphy and Jordan Patterson, so it'll be interesting to see how Alex Reyes, this guy who can touch triple digits with ease when he needs to, won't necessarily do it the way he did it in the Futures game, in which he knew his time was limited. But that was on Sunday when he last took the mound. He's going to have plenty of rest going into Saturday. He's had his fair share of problems this year, 9 starts with the Redbirds, 4.35 ERA, but he's still striking out guys left and right, 61 strikeouts and 41 in the third inning. So he'll be trying to get back on track there and facing a pretty good lineup in Albuquerque. So that's one of those matchups you always want to see on the old MILB TV.
I'm going to stay on the mound, too. I'm going to go to the Southern League and the AA Montgomery Biscuits, the affiliates of the Tampa Bay Rays. Screwball extraordinaire Brent Honeywell will be making his second AA start sometime this weekend. I believe it's going to be Saturday. As of right now, a different starter is listed for Saturday, so it could be Sunday for Montgomery, but keep your eyes open there for a look at Brent Honeywell. He's the Rays' number 2 prospect behind Blake Snell, and Honeywell is worth the hype. Really, really good prospect. Started this season 4-1 with a 2.41 ERA in 10 starts for Class A Advanced Charlotte in the Florida State League. So Brent Honeywell, a lot of fun to watch, and he and his Biscuits will be taking on the Tennessee Smokies this weekend coming up in Montgomery. So that does it for the 67th episode of the Show Before the Show podcast. This is a fun one today. I like this show.
Yeah, no, this was packed with a lot of stuff. I remember talking to Ben, and I was like, so what do you want to talk about? And he just listed this thing after that thing after that thing after that. And so his segment was packed. We got a lot of great stuff from Ryon Healy. Thanks again for him for joining us. And, we're recording this on Wednesday when it's just supposed to be the day without sports. But minor league baseball doesn't really ever stop. So
Never stops.
Never stops.
In fact, Wally Backman just posted the lineup for the Pacific Coast League's All-Stars, who will be clashing with the International League tonight. That's coming up before you'll get this podcast. But, hopefully you tuned in.
Yeah. Go to the site. There will be plenty of highlights from that game.
Be a ton of stuff.
If you missed it, we'll have all the stuff.
All right, Sam. Until next week, everybody enjoy the second half getting rolling all across the world of baseball, and we will talk to you then.